And my pages are here from Argentine Middle School, that's in Kansas City, Kansas, and they are all 8th graders. And so since they are all standing, I'll just ask them to wave as I say their names. So Lewis is here, and Daniel, and Jackson, and Mildred, and Aaliyah, and Alexa, and their teacher is here with them, Sarah Esther. And they are 8th graders, and they all know exactly where they're going next year for their high school experience. Harmon High School is very close to Argentine Middle School, and Christa Ray is a private school that one of the young ladies is going to be going to. So thank you for welcoming me here. They've never been to the Capitol before, so this is their first time to be here, so they're all excited to enjoy the experience of being pages. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Petty. And I was a page, but I'm not going to say what year, but I learned my lesson on that. So welcome to the Capitol, and you can come back and do what we do also. We have 2 items on our agenda today. And our first hearing is on SB 285, providing for the treatment of the reimbursement for certain expenses incurred by state officers and employees for travel and attending conferences or events provided by nonprofit organizations and for discounted or free access to entertainment, sporting events, or other activities. Charles, could you give us a briefing on the bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. So, as Madam Chair has indicated, this bill concerns the state governmental ethics law and makes the changes that she referenced from the title. The first change you can see on page 2 of the bill. Under current law, legislators are not to solicit contributions for the purpose of to be made to an organization for the purpose of paying for travel, conventions, that kind of thing. However, they may accept reimbursement for actual expenses for travel and hospitality entertainment that the legislator incurs in attending or participating in meetings, programs, or activities sponsored. And you'll see in the top of page 3 there, sponsored by a foreign nation or any organization organized under the laws of a foreign nation, an international organization. The reference to national organization is stricken, and there's also sort of a condition on a nonpartisan organization in current law that provides the organization is established for the purpose of serving, informing, educating, and strengthening state legislators in all states of the nation. So that reference is stricken, and the condition is added that the organization does not engage in lobbying in the state of Kansas. So that has changed with respect to when a legislator can accept reimbursement from activities in attending certain functions. The other change the bill makes you can find on page 4. This is a change to the law pertaining to free or special discount tickets, entertainment, sporting events. So under current law, a person subject to the act is not to solicit or accept free or special discount tickets, such as concerts, games, golf, hunting, fishing, other recreational activities. And here's a key language: when the free or special discount tickets or access are provided because of the person's official position. So that's current law. That phrase there you see is stricken on lines 31 and 32, and the condition has changed a little bit to be an exception. So one cannot accept free entertainment and other tickets, except, A, if it's obvious to the person accepting the free or special discount tickets or access that it's being provided because of such person's official position. So if it's obvious that it's being provided because of the person's official position, then you can't accept it, obvious to the person. Secondly, if the person's presence at the event or activity serves a legitimate state purpose or interest and such person's agency would authorize it. So that is also a provision that where one can accept these free entertainment and tickets and that kind of thing. So that's changed a little bit in how that's set up. And those are the two changes the bill makes with respect to the governmental ethics law in this bill. If enacted, the bill would become effective July 1st.
Thank you, Charles. Do we have questions? Senator Petty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Charles, when I look back at Section 2, so can you tell me exactly who this pertains to?
So there's a kind of language right at the beginning of Section 2 that lays that out. You can see sort of a list there, starting on line 11, governor, lieutenant governor, spouse of the governor, officers, employees of the executive branch, and members of boards, commissions, authorities of the executive branch.
The legislature?
So the legislature is not included there.
So none of this that we're talking about here pertains to the legislature?
So, yeah, this subsection A there does not include the legislature.
So just, so for clarification, so this bill, does it include the legislature?
So, I think, let's see, let's take a look at subsection. Yeah, so Section 1 would apply to the legislature.
So Section 1 applies to the legislature, but then Section 2 that deals specifically with any type of contribution only pertains to those listed in Section 2?
That's how I would understand this, yes.
And then, Madam Chair, as a follow-up, so then on page 4, under lines 33 through 38, so I'm just throwing this out here. So if the Sunflower State game occurs at K-State and the governor attends that game, as does all the, as the legislature's all invited as well as their spouses, and the governor attends that, but the governor couldn't go unless the governor's office was paying for it, unlike the legislature could all go because they've been invited and they're not paying for it. Would this be correct?
Yeah, as this statute is currently laid out, yes. So, you know, if the governor believed that if the governor thought it was obvious that the ticket to the game was not being provided because of the governor's official position, they could accept the free ticket. And if the governor's office would authorize payment, and there was a legitimate state purpose, they could possibly accept a free payment. The reference is a such person's agency, but there's not. But you know, this section applies to the listed entities there, right at the beginning of the section on page 3.
Madam Chair. So the governor or anybody from the executive branch, the lieutenant governor, I'm just going to go back to the Sunflower showdown. So none of them could go unless their office was paying for it, because it would be obvious that they're going in their position.
Well, the language is obvious to the person accepting.
Okay, obvious. I don't get in, I would not, okay, I'm just not going to pursue this point at this time. Thank you.
Perhaps a question for the conferee. Senator Bowser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm reading Director Proffitt's budgetary analysis, and he says the Government Ethics Commission indicates that enactment of this bill could result in savings that state agencies, because an outside entity could pay for certain expenses that agencies would not have to provide. Give us an example of what that might be, please.
Well, that would have to come about through, through the changes in the language on page 4. So, now it's, now the limitation is when it's provided because of the person's official position. That's, when you can't accept entertainment or free entertainment or sporting events. And now it's kind of switched around, so you can't accept it unless it's obvious that it's not being provided, or, it serves a legitimate state purpose. So if a presence of a member of the executive branch at an event or activity serves a legitimate state purpose, and the state, such person's agency would authorize it, then you can accept the free entertainment. So that would, I suppose, in some circumstances, provide for some savings.
Yeah, and maybe if I may, Madam Chair, if I dive down into this a little bit more, so if I work at the Department of Revenue and there's some sort of conference out of state, and some sponsor offers to pay for my travel, my hotel, my conference attendance fee, that would be accepted?
Yeah, so now you're referencing the first thing this bill does, which we turn back to pages 2 and 3. So under current law, you can't accept reimbursement for expenses that the legislator incurs in attending and participating in meetings. And then there's sort of a list of organizations or activities that are acceptable for accepting reimbursement for. And so that's changed a little bit with respect to the nonpartisan organizations. So that's the change you see there, but otherwise it doesn't change current law. And I'm referencing the top of page 3 and bottom of page 2.
How about we'll move on to our conferee and maybe clarify some confusion that we're all looking at. So we have our conferee, Josh Nye, partner with Kriegshauser New Law Group. Welcome to the committee, Josh, and I'm sure you're listening to that conversation, and you jump in with your comments and your testimony. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. If you're confused, it's because this statute is something like a Frankenstein in current law. And as a practitioner in governmental ethics and campaign finance law, I get calls regarding, can I do this, can I do that, from an executive branch and a legislative branch standpoint. So you've got two statutes that are at issue here. First is 46-237, and then you have 237A, and A is not a subsection, it's a separate statute. So the first one is the 237. This is the legislative travel under my testimony. And then I want to talk about the executive branch officials that Senator Petty was asking about in Section 2 separately. But we have to kind of deconstruct this to rebuild it back up, because that's how practitioners like myself have to do it when we're trying to figure out what exactly does this statute mean and whether you can accept a $39 free ticket or a $41 free ticket if it's for a state purpose, not for a state purpose, et cetera, and advise on those things, or if we just throw up our hands and say, call the Governmental Ethics Commission and let them figure it out, which sometimes people want to do and sometimes they don't. So under the legislative travel, this really comes from something that was highlighted in the last year. There was an advisor opinion that a group asked of the Governmental Ethics Commission, I think it was 2024-02, where an organization that has general educational purpose, but did not necessarily fit this kind of 50-state standard in current law. There was an opinion that was issued that even though you're providing this educational conference, you cannot pay for legislative travel because that you don't meet the very narrow definition of you're either a foreign nation or any national, nonprofit, nonpartisan organization established for the purpose of serving, informing, educating, and strengthening state legislatures in all states of the nation. And so this is really the NCSL or ALEC carve-out. So the question came before the commission, why are these organizations carved out and not more regional organizations? And so that's where this proposal comes. I would encourage you, even though I don't think Ms. Bull-Stewart submitted testimony, she is here today, the interim director for the Governmental Ethics Commission. We have talked about this bill. I think the commission was apprised of this bill last Thursday during a special meeting, and she may have some comments as well, because I think both on the practitioner side and even on the commission side, there's been some head scratching over the years as far as why you carve out these two specific organizations, but don't let others educate. So we think I think a better balance and limiting principle is that if you don't lobby in the state of Kansas and you're a C3, or even if you're a C4 or C6, if you're not engaged in lobbying in the state of Kansas, then we really don't have a quid pro quo or corruption governmental interest in preventing you from going and receiving education on public policy issues at a conference as legislators. So that's the first thing. So I don't know if we want to stop there or go on to the executive branch.
Why don't we see if we have any questions on the legislative piece? I guess I would, Josh. When you accept, would you call it a scholarship, or I'm not even sure if the right word is scholarship, if someone pays your fee to attend a conference, do you report that to the ethics on your report?
I think
Is it trackable, traceable? That I see that is in some of the opponents' testimony. Is there a way that that's transparent to people who want to view the report? Would be where I would be wondering.
so. The statute says that no legislator shall solicit any contribution. So that's where it starts for the purpose of paying for travel. But then it goes on to say that except nothing in this act or the act of which this act is amendatory shall be construed to prohibit any legislator from accepting reimbursement for actual expenses for travel, subsistence, hospitality, entertainment, or other expenses incurred in attending and are participating in meetings, programs, and activities sponsored by, and then you have these carve-outs. So you have this generalized, except that nothing in this act shall apply to this type of travel and expenses, and then you have these special organizations. So I guess what I would say is, I defer to Ms. Bull-Stewart if she knows on that question, but currently, whatever is being reported with respect to NCSL, with respect to ALEC, or with respect to Israel, or, Europe, or something like that are flying legislators over on a trade mission or something like that, whatever's happening there would now happen in terms of transparency for any nonprofit that's not engaged in lobbying in the state of Kansas.
I am wondering if Caitlin Bull-Stewart might like to answer that. I think it's a pretty straightforward question that the opponents look like they would like to know that, and I'm not sure if there's good, Josh, that I see what you're saying, but let's see what the ethics.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. Regarding the reporting of any gifts received, those would go on the statements of substantial interest that legislators file. So it's only over the amount of $500. And if it's over $500, then it would be reported on that statement of substantial interest and reflect whichever group provided the gift that would now be allowed under that new exception.
Okay. Okay. Pat, or Senator Petty, would you have a question for Caitlin?
Well, I'm not sure, Caitlin, maybe you can respond to this. I noticed that the word national was stricken. Do you have an idea as to why that was done?
Sure. So previous commission opinions, advisory opinions, analyzing the text of the statute as it is now, was very strict on the word national, as in it, there was a former advisory opinion with the group that was based, I think, primarily in Florida and was regional based, but they wanted our legislators to come for something that was relevant to Kansas. But because it wasn't literally in all 50 states, it wasn't actually national. And so I think the attempt here is probably just to eliminate that overly strict reading, that the commission wasn't, looking at the legislative history, wasn't exactly sure of the reasoning behind that. So I think it's just an attempt to add clarity and eliminate some perhaps archaic language.
Go ahead.
Just to follow up from there, I know still the words then nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. And so under ethics guidelines, does nonpartisan mean that it doesn't matter what party that would be receive an invitation?
Correct, yes. So nonpartisan and consistent with former advisory opinions is that it's not a young Democrats or a young Republicans group. It's just not one party or the other. There are different groups that are perhaps focused on issues that are nonpartisan issues. Campaign finance is an example. If they had a group that was just advocating for that, that's nonpartisan, nonprofit. So yes, as the short answer.
Senator Fascadeau.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my first question is for Josh Ney. So Josh, you just made a statement that you could not solicit that lobbyist for monies to travel. However, if that lobbyist or that the head of that conference says, we have a scholarship and we'll give you money, then what? So is that part still okay?
Yeah, that's, again, I didn't write this original statute, so we're trying to kind of make sense of it. If I had my druthers, I'd say, pick what you're concerned about, strike everything in the statute, and write a regulation that's clear. But, we've got precedent and all of that, and we've got to make do with that. So we've got H, 237H is what we've got. And the first part is shall not solicit, and that's a general travel, subsistence, and other expenses prohibition. But then you have this seemingly, this carve-out that starts on the, on line 39 of page 2, there's a but at the end of that, and it says, but nothing in this act or the act of which this act is amendatory shall be construed, and then it has this carve-out. And so your question is, can you solicit? And I think the answer to that would be no still, because the general prohibition, but then you can, on the back end, accept reimbursement. And the question is, from whom can you accept reimbursement? And from whom is what this bill is about.
Madam Chair, then I have a question for this young lady. Is your name Tammy?
Caitlin, yes.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us and answering questions for us, even though you're not on the agenda on this one.
I'm here
We're
for the
glad.
next
We're
ones.
glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm happy that you have me.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you made a statement of reporting that substantial piece. What can you be a little more clear of what you're saying, report on that?
Yes.
How it relates to accepting? I just received an email saying they'll pay for me to travel to a conference.
Yes.
So,
So,
thank you.
the statement of substantial interests are coming up here. You can start filing them in April. They're the financial disclosures that you all file. So the reason that is also within Chapter 46, the gift and conflict of interest rules. And so those financial disclosures that are available on the Secretary of State's website, and that you file through our office would disclose, I don't have the exact schedule in front of me, but it would disclose the amount, I believe the amount of the gift. If not, you're just disclosing it was over $500 in value received, who you received it from, and I believe the date. And that information is publicly available so that your constituents or anyone else can see who you have been accepting reimbursement or gifts over $500 from.
So that gift, though, is that just to me individually, or, lobbyists will give all of us things at the same time? They'll drop off gifts to our office, so can you clarify?
Absolutely. So the lobbying expenditures are covered with the lobbying reports. So that's how the disclosure aspect of that is resolved, as they will, file their expenditure reports. The statement of substantial interest gift disclosures related to those large $500 gifts that lobbyists are prohibited from giving you up to a certain amount. So it's kind of to catch those other gifts outside of lobbyists. Also, Mr. Nye did a great job explaining the to whom question and walking through. Again, the issue is, as legislators, you cannot solicit, but you can accept if it's from the right person.
You said that very nicely. Yeah, easy to understand. So thank you, Caitlin. So thanks for answering our questions. And how about, Josh, let's hop into the second part, the executive branch. And you're right, this is very complicated.
Yeah, what I take from your comments is that I'm not easy to understand, so
Certainly did not mean that.
I'll do my best to live up to that. Section 2, again, I didn't write these statutes, not apologizing for the statutes as they exist today, but we have to make them work. So you've got 237A, and then it says, so the 237 is any state officer, and that's legislator and executive branch. But then you have this special statute that then applies to the governor, lieutenant governor, governor's spouse, all officers and employees of the executive branch of the state government. I don't know why they need 1 and 2 if you've got 4, but that you still have all officers and employees of the executive branch. And then all members of boards, commissions, and authorities of the executive branch of the state government. So this is basically the entire executive branch as well as the governor's spouse. And currently, there's two ways in which you regulate gifts or things of value coming to these persons. The first is a limitation on travel. So down on page 4, E1, I'm sorry, let me get there. D, okay, so travel starts in D on line 18 of page 4, and D subsection 1 and 2 are the limiting principles of when you can, those persons in the executive branch can accept free or special discount travel. And that is first when it's obvious to the person accepting the same that the free or special discount travel and the related expenses are not being provided because of the person's official position, or when the person's presence at a meeting, seminar, or event serves a legitimate state purpose or interest, and the person's agency authorizes or would authorize payment for such travel and expenses. So then you get to, so that's current law. Then you get to E, that covers accepting free or special discount tickets or access to entertainment or sporting events or activities. And so the current limiting principle in E for tickets is different than for travel. And so what this bill would do is take the limiting principles in D that currently apply to travel and make them apply to the entertainment. So in my mind, this is kind of the Super Bowl situation with the governor. If the governor gets into some bet with the competing, team's governor or something like that, and it's a fun tourism type, lots of media around the states and proud of our state and all of that type of deal, you can actually, the governor could accept travel to that event, but couldn't actually accept a Super Bowl ticket or discounted ticket. And I think that there are circumstances in state government where certain entertainment events, even though we want to keep people from basically cashing in on their official position to do entertainment events and that type of deal, but there are legitimate state purposes sometimes, and that already exists, that limiting principle already exists for travel, and in this instance, we would just say the same articulation of that state purpose has to be made for accepting the entertainment or discounted tickets as well. And so I also think it's interesting in current law that it says that, and such person's agency authorizes or would authorize payment for such travel and expenses. So if you can justify that your executive branch agency would have paid for this event, that's where the fiscal note comes in, is that now under state law, we're saying, yes, we would have done this because it's a state purpose, Secretary of Commerce, some sort of tourism type purpose, but because they're offering to pay it, we're actually saving a little bit from the taxpayers' money. I don't think it's going to be some windfall that we're going to see a savings on this, but that's where the fiscal note comes in. You may choose to do it differently and say, you know what, we like it a little tighter on the entertainment, but currently it's kind of ironic that or disjointed that you can fly to the Super Bowl, but once you get there, you got to use your campaign funds or personal funds to buy the ticket.
Do we have questions for Josh on the executive branch piece? Senator Reichman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and also Josh Nye, in your presentation. I still am having trouble trying to go through this, and not that you're not doing a good job, it's just that I'm having roadblocks in my mind trying to go through it. Yeah. But as this bill goes through, would this make it acceptable then, as you mentioned that last example of the governor going down to, take care of the transportation down there, and also the discounted ticket, that she wouldn't have to pay for that then? That will happen with this bill if we pass it?
If it's a legitimate state purpose and that can be articulated, and the official's agency says that they would either pay for it or would have paid for it were it not for the availability of a special discounted ticket. Now, that's still going to have to be reported on statements of substantial interest, et cetera.
Right.
But I think since this is an executive branch only section, the reality is that there are some events out there that kind of mix entertainment with, other public policy type purposes to we would recognize that we want to put our state and our representatives and our leaders the best foot forward to promote our state. And so this would just make the limiting principles that currently exist for travel exist for entertainment as well.
I might follow up. You're saying it is possible then?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Petty, do I see your hand up? Yes. Yes, Senator Petty.
Thank you, and thanks for Josh, for your presentation here. Just as a follow-up, so you're saying that now if this legislation would pass, with the addition of lines or A and B, from lines 33 through 38, that, let's use, we got the World Cup coming here next year. Okay, so it would possibly be that our governor would be present or be invited to a World Cup game? And you mentioned about some sort of competition that, that might happen with World Cup game, but let's just say that. So this then would say that if the presence of that person serves a legitimate state purpose, World Cup's here in Kansas, our World Cup game, well, actually it's going to be in Missouri, but we're having lodging in Kansas. And if the office had said, yes, we would have paid for that, then somebody else could pay for it.
Yes. The World Cup organizers or whoever could say, these are the dignitaries we would like at our event. The governor's office or some cabinet level office decides that this is a legitimate state purpose. If I were their lawyer, I would say, write that out, have some memo to file that you've run this by your fiscal department, and they would approve it for payment because it's accomplishing this legitimate state purpose, and then check with the Governmental Ethics Commission to make sure that they agree that this is a legitimate state purpose before you accept something. But currently, they can't accept that at all if they have reason to believe that it's because of their official position. So the answer is yes, they could accept that, but they would have to articulate these limiting principles first, otherwise it'd be illegal.
Just as a follow-up, would that then pertain to if it's considered a legitimate state purpose for economic development?
I mean, there's no definition of legitimate state purpose here, but say, obviously, this is going to come down to a reasonable fact finder. I mean, it would be a misdemeanor to violate this. So ultimately, that the definition, that term legitimate state purpose, I think is throughout statute in other places too. And so at the end of the day, you have to articulate something that is reasonable.
Thank you.
Okay, Josh, I don't see any other questions. You sure have given us a lot to think about here. We'll have to boil this down so it's easy to understand, and we can talk more about that.
Like I said, if you just want to repeal the whole statute and start over, it'd make it easier on me.
Well, as you say that, Josh, if we didn't work this bill this year, is that an option for an easy-to-do rewrite? Or
I don't know, maybe like more of a joint committee type thing or a modernization of language. But my understanding, this really quickly, my understanding in talking with former Executive Director Carol Williams is she'd share stories with me about, oh, well, some legislator sent out a Christmas card and we dinged them for that. And so the legislature just adds that exemption the next session to make it legal. And so that's how these statutes have come about with, you've got all these carve-outs over the years because it's like one-offs where you're just adding to a statute versus just say what you want to regulate and then don't have all these other exceptions to it. So I don't know how to do it.
Sounds like a big bite of the apple too, when you say that as well. Caitlin, before we close the hearing, would you like to add anything, even though you're not on the agenda, but is there any other thoughts that you could help us with? And not to put you on the spot, so don't feel like you
No,
need
I appreciate it. No, I think a lot of the points have been addressed so far. Former Executive Director Skoglund and I shared the same kind of belief that currently it's confusing and disjointed that you can accept the gift of the travel to the event, but you cannot accept the ticket to the event. And so, again, as Mr. Naya said, it's often like our tax exemption statutes. You just get a new exemption, another one, and now we're wondering how we even got here. So I think the commission would be happy to, they're working on subcommittees reviewing the conflict of interest rules, procedural regulations, things like that as well. I'm sure they would love to come to the table and talk about cleaning this up because it is a little confusing that there is 46237 and then 46237 little a, and they are different. And so I think adding clarity would definitely be a great thing, but I appreciate you giving me a moment to
Okay,
share my
well,
2 cents.
thank you. You're part of the team here. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Committee, we do have another hearing scheduled, and Randy, we have David on WebEx, right? I'm not quite sure we can open the hearing and have David go first after Charles, and then pause the hearing if you like, or can David hear us? David, could you come back tomorrow if we don't get a start on this bill today?
You're speaking to me, David Keating. I can hear
Yes.
you.
Yes, thank you, David. Are you able to join us tomorrow if we don't start this hearing today, or is your time really valuable that we should go ahead and have?
Look, I'm
Revisor.
happy to accommodate the committee any way I can be helpful, so.
Well, and I
Sure.
can tell you that clock is like 3 minutes slow. And to get a good start on this, I'm not sure we'd give you the proper amount of time. Could you join us tomorrow if we put this on the agenda first thing?
Sure.
Okay, that eases my mind. I didn't want you to not be able to join us again, but I don't feel like we really have enough time to get a good start on this bill and then also chat with you. So, okay, well, we'll see you tomorrow at 9:30 then, David.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. So, sometimes I'm over hopeful that we can get 2 bills done on the same day, and this is one of those. So that's close the hearing. Let's do that on Senate Bill 285 first. And then tomorrow we're scheduled, and we're just going to work bills. So that's have our hearing on 286, and we also have Thursday too. And if we can have our amendments and discussions with Charles on 66, on how we'd like to work that. And then the whistleblower bill and the House bill, and I forget that number. Do you recall that right quick? 2160. So if we have our amendments, 2160, if we don't get through both of those tomorrow, we can do that Thursday. We can also meet Monday and Tuesday too. So we have plenty of time to work those bills. So we don't have to be rushed on it. So, well, with that, that's adjourned for the day.